There's something almost cinematic about watching a prince fall, but this isn't fiction. This is real life. And what we're seeing unfold around Prince Andrew is unlike anything the British monarchy has faced in modern history. From royal privilege to public disgrace, from the Queen's favorite son to a man stripped of every title and ounce of dignity, his story has become the ultimate cautionary tale of arrogance, denial, and consequence. Once hailed as Heir Miles Andy, the charming royal who represented Britain across the globe, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is now just Andrew, a man clinging to a mansion he can no longer call his own. His fall from grace has been brutal, but what's surfacing now about how he lived behind palace doors is far worse than anyone imagined. And it's not just about scandal or money, it's about how unchecked entitlement can twist a man beyond recognition. When King Charles finally made the call to strip Andrew of his privileges and remove him from royal lodge, it wasn't just a royal family decision, it was a public reckoning. Royal insiders say the king had reached his limit. The monarchy was bleeding credibility, and Andrew had become its deepest wound. For nearly 2 decades, Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson lived rent-free in the sprawling 30-room Royal Lodge, a luxury estate nestled on Windsor's grounds. Officially, he paid a peppercorn rent, a symbolic payment so outdated it barely covered the cost of a dinner at Buckingham Palace. But behind the polished walls, something darker was brewing. Staff described the atmosphere as toxic. Every hallway echoed with tension. Every servant knew the risk of making even the smallest mistake. When news broke that the king was evicting him, the British press erupted. Some called it justice. Others called it long overdue. But those who'd seen what life was really like inside Royal Lodge said one thing: "You have no idea what went on in there." According to explosive new claims from royal historian Andrew Lone, Andrew's behavior toward staff wasn't just entitled, it was degrading. Former aides described him as impossible to work for. His infamous 2-word command, "Do it," became a symbol of his arrogance. It wasn't a request, it was a barked order that carried both menace and ridicule. Even seasoned palace staff who had served the Queen Mother said Andrew was on another level of unpleasantness. Rude, ignorant, impossible, one called him. He would snap if his breakfast was late by a minute or if the curtains weren't open just so. While his mother treated staff with kindness, Andrew reportedly saw them as lesser beings. He acted like he was still in some kind of royal empire where servants existed only to bow, another insider said. It's easy to imagine the tension, living in a palace surrounded by grandeur, yet dreading every morning because you never knew what mood the Duke of York would be in. And what makes it worse? Many of these claims were quietly dismissed for years. Palace officials either ignored them or brushed them under the rug. After all, who was going to tell the Queen that her favorite son had become a nightmare behind closed doors? But this wasn't just about attitude. It was about behavior that bordered on the bizarre. According to multiple sources, Prince Andrew's daily routine was a blend of privilege, laziness, and pure absurdity. He refused to draw his own curtains, even when they were right beside his bed. Staff were forced to climb multiple flights of stairs just to pull them open while he remained under the covers. Maids later revealed that his room was often littered with used tissues every morning, a detail that still makes people shudder. They were expected to clean it up silently, as if it were just another royal duty. And then there were the toys. Yes, grown man Prince Andrew reportedly kept dozens of teddy bears and stuffed animals meticulously arranged on his bed. Each one had a specific position, documented in a laminated photo guide. If a maid misplaced even one by an inch, he would erupt. Staff described the routine as infantile and terrifying. Imagine walking into a royal bedroom and being scolded like a child for moving a teddy bear's paw. One former worker said it perfectly. It wasn't just about power, it was about control. He enjoyed watching people squirm. And while the tabloids feasted on stories about Jeffrey Epstein and Virginia Giuffre, inside the palace, this childish cruelty had become its own silent scandal. But as it turns out, Andrew's behavior wasn't confined to Windsor's walls. It followed him wherever he went, across oceans, into boardrooms, and even onto the world stage. And that's where the next part of his downfall truly began. But that wasn't the whole story. because what Andrew did abroad made his behavior at home look tame in comparison. You'd think that after serving in the Navy and earning medals of honor, Prince Andrew would have carried himself with discipline and humility. But insiders say the man who returned from the Falklands War was nothing like the one who'd left. Over time, that sense of service twisted into entitlement. Those who worked closest to him described him not as a royal gentleman, but as a spoiled manchild who never grew up. His moods swung like a pendulum. One moment, he'd be charming and cracking jokes. The next, he'd explode over the tiniest inconvenience. There's one story that staff still talk about. Andrew reportedly once called in a television technician in the middle of the night because he couldn't figure out how to use his remote control. Yes, a full security detail, woken up past midnight just to press a button. Another time, his protection officers were ordered to fetch his golf balls while he practiced, a task that left them stunned. "We couldn't believe it," one former guard said. "He treated everyone like they existed to serve his moods." This wasn't royal protocol, it was unchecked privilege, taken to extremes. And as the world was about to see, that same arrogance was about to destroy him publicly. When Andrew was appointed as the UK's special trade envoy, it was supposed to be a prestigious role, a chance to represent Britain's interests abroad. But what he did with that position shocked those in government and horrified the palace. According to journalist Andrew Lone's biography entitled "The Rise and Fall of the House of York," Andrew treated official trips like luxury holidays. He traveled with large entourages, stayed in extravagant hotels, and mingled with shady billionaires, some with reputations so questionable that even diplomats refused to attend dinners in his honor. One former aide said, "He acted like the rules didn't apply to him. Every trip was about indulgence, the fine dining, the private jets, the company of women." There was even a claim that during one trip to Thailand, Andrew entertained a group of women at a private villa, the kind of story that made headlines but was quickly buried under royal silence. "Nothing to see here," palace officials would say. But behind the scenes, the Foreign Office was fuming. His behavior had crossed the line from embarrassing to unacceptable. That sense of invincibility, the belief that he could do whatever he wanted, wherever he wanted, followed him home. And by the time the Epstein connection surfaced, Andrew's public image was already hanging by a thread. When the world learned of Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein, everything changed. Overnight, he went from a royal representative to a global disgrace. The photo, the one showing his arm around Virginia Giuffer's waist, became one of the most infamous images in royal history. And then came the interview, that now legendary BBC Newsnight interview that was supposed to clear his name, but did the opposite. "Is it possible you met Virginia Roberts?" the interviewer asked. Andrew's reply, "No recollection of that," instantly went viral for all the wrong reasons. He claimed he couldn't sweat. He smiled while discussing serious allegations. He denied what the photo showed plain as day. It wasn't just bad PR, it was self-destruction on camera. Even loyal royalists couldn't defend it. The late Queen reportedly watched it in disbelief. The palace scrambled to do damage control, but the damage was irreversible. Within weeks, Andrew was forced to step back from public duties. Sponsors dropped out, charities cut ties, and the once proud Duke of York became a walking symbol of royal scandal. But while the world saw a prince losing his titles, behind closed doors, his downfall was tearing the royal family apart. And no one felt that fracture more than King Charles, Sarah Ferguson, and their daughters. Because when one royal falls, the cracks don't stop with him. They spread through the entire House of Windsor. Here's something that still puzzles royal watchers. If Andrew had lost his official duties and wasn't drawing a salary, how on earth was he affording his lifestyle? The luxury cars, the exotic holidays, the gifts, none of it added up. Reports suggest Andrew relied heavily on private deals and friendly donors, which sounds polite, until you realize it means something else entirely. Insiders claim that during his time as a trade envoy, he accepted lavish gifts from foreign businessmen, including, allegedly, a priceless Fabergé egg. Others say he used his royal title to open doors for questionable partners, expecting favors in return. And all this while claiming he had no money for rent. Royal Lodge, his massive 30-room mansion, was practically a royal freebie. He'd signed a bizarre lease deal that allowed him to live there for decades for almost nothing. For years, the British public footed the bill for his protection, maintenance, and staff. But once the Epstein scandal exploded, even the most loyal taxpayers lost patience. By 2025, public outrage was boiling over. People were demanding action, and King Charles could no longer turn a blind eye. For Charles, this wasn't just about discipline, it was about survival. The monarchy's reputation had taken blow after blow, and Andrew's name had become toxic. Reports claim that after one particularly tense phone call, Charles told his brother the royal family could no longer protect him. It was a moment of truth and humiliation. The man who once strutted through palace corridors with pride was now being told to pack his bags. Andrew fought it, of course. He insisted on staying at Royal Lodge. He argued that the property was his home, that he'd done nothing wrong. But Charles stood firm. "You've embarrassed this family long enough," he allegedly said, according to a palace insider. And then came the final strike, a public announcement confirming that Andrew's remaining privileges and titles would be permanently removed. Even his military affiliations, once a point of honor, were gone. From that moment, His Royal Highness was no more. He was simply Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The symbolism was devastating. The monarchy was cleaning house, literally and figuratively. Royal Lodge would soon be empty, a silent monument to arrogance and wasted privilege. But the collapse of Andrew's world didn't just affect him. It rippled through his family in ways few could imagine. Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, had always been one of Andrew's fiercest defenders. For years, she brushed off the scandals, insisting he was misunderstood. But by the time King Charles intervened, even Fergie had grown distant. Sources close to her say she was exhausted, desperate to salvage her own image. Behind the scenes, she started quietly attending events without him, focusing on charity work and personal projects. It was her way of saying, enough is enough. Their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, were caught in an impossible position, torn between loyalty to their father and the weight of public shame. Once seen as the monarchy's modern princesses, they suddenly found themselves avoiding cameras, skipping public appearances, and shielding their young families from the chaos. One report claimed they'd even left the UK temporarily, needing space to escape the storm. "They love their father, but they can't live under his shadow anymore," a friend revealed. And honestly, who could blame them? Imagine watching the man who raised you become the most ridiculed figure in royal history, the butt of every headline, every meme, every whisper. The family that once stood united under the late Queen's quiet dignity was now fractured, each member trying to outrun a scandal that refused to fade. But if Andrew thought the worst was behind him, he was wrong. Because what came next wasn't just eviction or exile, it was total isolation. And the next move from the palace would make sure his name was erased from royal life forever.